I got letters to the editors on my mind. I've heard so many of them today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And,
yeah.
and it's been so much going on. I think that Dr. Warren, between all the technical difficulties that we've been seeing on websites and Facebook and everybody's just experiencing a lot of technical difficulties that y'all might as well just get your prayer closet and get your prayer closet now, because we're going to need your prayers tonight as we get through. But tonight, Dr. Warren, we are from the desk of the editor, and we are simulcasting on YouTube, Twitter or X,
All right.
and Facebook. And so you can get us that on GOD Radio 1 and on Facebook directly on GOD Radio 1 or on the Voice and Viewpoint website, Voice and Viewpoint Facebook page.
Right. And you can call in
Yes.
if you want to. 858-251-6111.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So, Dr. Warren, crazy world. So
been
much is
crazy.
going on. And I don't know, we got the budget talks we got to talk about. We got to talk about the sit-ins and the missed graduations and all of that, because there is a theme that is taking place even with those missed graduations. And we just got to talk about what's happening in our country. I want to know if you have an update on the trial. Are we going to really get a conviction, or is this going to be more of the same? So let's just start wherever you want to start in the world.
Well, let's start at the very top then with the trial scenario, because the trial is becoming almost less and less important if we ever wanted to have Trump as a felon running for president. It's pretty clear now that no matter how many convictions he get, he's their candidate, he's on the ballot, and at the way Biden is going, Trump could get elected. And the tragedy of it is there's a whole bunch of black folks are lining up to vote for him. Now, here's the scenario. We got these things happening. Judge Cannon down in Florida, where we thought we had the whole issue about secured documents and everything, she just suspended the whole thing indefinitely. So where there was an effort to get a trial there, that's not going to happen. So we're back in New York with this trial with the Stormy Daniels and the influence of the money in the campaign. We have the second federal case in D.C., and that case, of course, is being hung up, waiting for the Supreme Court to rule on the issue of whether or not the president has immunity. And the Trump-appointed court has stalled, and they're dragging their feet, and it looks like they're not going to give a decision until after the election on this issue. To add to that, you have a situation in the House, which is Republican control, that the Democrats rescued the Speaker, Johnson, when Margie Taylor and the group were trying to put him out because he acted on the Ukraine and Taiwan and the Israel budget dollars and the other things that were tied into it. They rescued him. Now we see an interesting scenario, because with Trump having compromised the court, with the Heritage Foundation's 2025 project laying the blueprint for everything he's going to do to continue to dismantle government once he's elected. And these are the same people that laid out the plan for him before he was elected. And he went in trying to unravel everything that Obama had done. And so he's got all kinds of, it's a 900-page document. He made the cover of Time magazine last week. And here is the ultimate tragedy. A lot of the people who were election officials in the states have resigned, retired, run away. They've been replaced by right-wing MAGA people, the Trump group. And even if Biden wins the popular election, if the Republicans still control the House, there is now a fear that, unlike Nancy Pelosi, Johnson, as the Speaker, MAGA Republican he is, he could delay the certification. It could be thrown to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court could once again drag their feet, and we could find ourselves beyond January 6th with, even if Biden is elected, not able to be certified because they would have compromised the Electoral College and the whole process.
Yeah, and I think that the real sad thing about it is that we're seeing this an attempt to destroy democracy from within, and the attack is no longer from without; it is directly from within, and it doesn't seem like nobody is taking apart or are holding true to their oath of their office. It's just about party lines at this point, even when it's not for the betterment of the country.
Oh, I think they forgot they even took an oath of office. No one's concerned about oath of office, rule of law. What we see in the Stormy Daniels case is the people really aren't worried about what happened. I mean, the legal system is concerned, but beyond that, we have some major problems. As one observer said, all it takes is one juror to have a hung jury. If you have a hung jury, it doesn't go anyplace. Mm-hmm. You don't get a conviction. You still have a judge based on a number of contempt citations that could put Trump into a cell in an orange jumpsuit for a period. Mm-hmm. But it's not likely. They've been discussing how would that happen. Probably lock him up at lunchtime, let him go home, maybe an ankle bracelet. Don't know how to secure a former president with the Secret Service a part of the detail, even if he's in a cell. Mm-hmm. And so, meanwhile, the government of the people is not being taken care of. Mm-hmm. The government is at a standstill, and the Republicans have offered nothing in terms of ideas other than stop whatever is brought up. If it's brought up by a Democrat, it's dead and it's wrong, and they don't want it. Mm-hmm. And I blame the people. I blame we the people for sitting back, letting it happen in an election year, allowing people who could be voted out, recalled, or impeached to be about the business of destroying the government. Yeah. And I think that they should change the name from MAGA, the MAGA people, Make America Great Again, to MAGWA. And the MAGWA people want to make America white again. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole agenda. And we are sitting on the sideline as a people with the greatest number of needs in the greatest areas, facing a budget deficit here in the city of San Diego of $164 million, with the mayor cutting equity and programs that reach the people in the greatest need, while he maintains LGBTQ programs with nothing being said. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest tragedies is that with the budget that's come forward, it's become apparent that the budget cuts were supposed to take like 2% across the board from various programs. Mm-hmm. Well, when it got to the equity program, they took 70%. Mm-hmm. They decimated the program. Mm-hmm. And so people are protesting. They are showing up downtown with signs. I think one of the most telling ones is one that says, Todd, we want to live, mm-hmm. because we're at that point. Mm-hmm. And while that's happening at the city, I know I'm giving you the whole rundown. We can discuss it. UCSD, the police, they finally calling for the resignation of the chancellor. There's no way he should be able to stay in office when the black woman who was president of Harvard was forced out for some of the same reasons here because of positions that were being taken.
Mm-hmm. So let's start off with the budget. Now, from what I understood with the budget here in San Diego is that across the board, every department was going to take a 2% cut. What I also understood is that every department that had unspent funds, all of those funds were then re-brought in. If they were not already allocated to a project or something of that nature, if it was sitting there and had not actually been allocated, that all of those funds were being taken back. And I hear from what I'm seeing is that's what happened to the equity program, is that because those funds, because I know some people did get funds and did get through the process. I think the frustrating thing that people have is that they were still trying to get through the process, and because they didn't get through the process before the budget cuts came, the money that they were going after was then taken away.
But it wasn't the fault of the people running the equity program.
No, it wasn't.
It's all been a bottleneck among the people that are at the top of the food chain. You got a chief operating officer who probably could have been helpful with that. There's no signs of him speaking out, taking a position, or doing anything in the midst of all of this. Mm-hmm. So, what's happening?
Yeah.
in terms of it, okay? And, you know, it was just $1 million could have made a big difference in a lot of programs. You know, you boast that you didn't take the libraries or the recreation department, but when you look closely, the Library Foundation people tell you they've been at a deficit and in a critical posture already from the beginning. And so a lot of dollars came to us in the pandemic, but those dollars were cut off, and those dollars reinforced local dollars that were spent until those dollars arrived. So we have a problem at the city. Meanwhile, the county has a surplus, which they always maintain, and they're giving nice little pots to each of the 5 supervisors for all their little special programs and everything. Supervisor Stepp was on talking about how well that works and everybody who benefits from it and the whole bit. At one point, it was like $1 million a member for discretionary spending. So I don't know. I don't remember how much it is at this point, but these things are real.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm asking, because you know, in budget cut years and things of that nature, and what I'm trying to get everybody to really look at is that this was the first read per se. I think there's 3 reads before they actually vote on it, because now they got to come back and there's going to be another proposal put out now that the council people have to put their put in and things of that nature, and then there'll be the final. And everybody's not going to get everything that they want. I would like to see that something is restored in the equity department. I would like to see something restored with the whole cannabis equity piece. And what they're doing with cannabis. Not that I'm in support of cannabis, but I do believe that there should be equity in how licenses and things are given out across the board, and not just one family or one entity controlling it all, and nothing is being given to the communities that actually have had the greatest impact. But I also think that after we protest and we get we holler, we scream, I think we have to get down to the fact of what can we get moving forward and how do we do it? The biggest thing I think is that, Dr. Warren, as you know, engagement can't just happen when the situation comes up. Engagement must be taking place consistently all year long, so before it comes up, we're already in position. And I think that that's where we fall short. We only get in position when there's a problem, but we don't stay in position after we work through the problem.
Well, most people know that we don't, that we are like the fizzle with the soda. You put your thumb in the bottle and shake it, it fizzles, and you take your thumb out, it goes away. And most of us go away, and people in decision-making positions who crunch the numbers, count the votes, look at who's voting, who didn't vote, and why should I be concerned about the people that don't vote?
Yeah.
And so we're sitting out there trying to holler righteousness, but we won't do our part.
Yeah.
We won't go to the polls. And if we went to the polls and we voted in mass, we wouldn't have to worry about a lot of this stuff because they would be looking someplace else for cuts.
Yeah, and I think that that's the biggest thing is that, you know, a lot of times when this happens, you know, we might be the loudest voice, but we're not the most consistent voice.
That's
and
true.
Most of the things that are taking place are going to go behind closed doors. One of the things I've also noticed, and I think that people have to be optimistic, each council member is going to be pushing for dollars. And I believe that each council person is going to get so much dollars back. I think that District 4 and 9 are the ones that are the most, or is it 4 and 8?
No, I think it's 4 and 8. I don't think that is that much in 9.
Okay.
But, you know, it depends on who you talk to.
So let's just say District 4 and say District 8. I think that those districts, after they do divvy out the money between the 9, I think that those districts should get an additional 20% or 25% more than any other district because those are the most underserved districts. And I think that would then show some sensitivity to the needs of these communities.
But they don't vote, Dr. Thompson. They don't vote in proportion to what you're asking for. And so if it comes down to whether you give it to them or you give it to Rancho Bernardo or go north to La Jolla, that they're going to get it because they vote. Yeah. And we still can't get it across to people. You know, we're in a crisis, and history tells us that at least 21 great civilizations in the history of mankind have collapse from within.
Mm-hmm.
And America is moving down that same path, even as Rome did. Took Rome 400 years, America 200 years, coming up fast on it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've set ourselves up for it. You know, all of this protests over Gaza, the Palestinians and the Jewish people, the universities should be places where people sit down and hold conversation.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people are outside agitators who have come in, and it could be possible to handle this, but the hatred has come into the picture. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you start protesting based on the humanitarian concern for Gaza, but you done left Gaza off the table at this point. They got the supplies going in there to the extent it's feasible, and you're now talking about the vesting from investments. I don't think there's those many people that have investments. I think the thing that's going to kill Biden and open the door is people demanded that if you really care about Gaza, then why keep sending weapons to Israel when Israel is using those bombs and weapons against the people that you say you're asking them not to? Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, has made it very clear he's going to do what he wants to do, and he doesn't care. He wants to move on Rafah. He doesn't care how many people are killed. He is in that vindictive mode, and he knows that they have been guilty of genocide and crimes against humanity with what they've done in Gaza, not just destroying buildings and 30,000 people, but destroying history and monuments and a whole bit. It's all by design that is taking place. And so here we are with a president who apparently would rather lose his position and an election than take a position on Israel. I think we need to understand what is the toehold that Israel has that's so great that we would let our government go down the tubes and be in disarray, moving into convention time, just like back in '68 in Chicago during the Vietnam War. We're moving back to confusion, and it's the agitators, the outside elements that are doing it. Now, let's talk about the graduates, the students who are not graduating. If you go back 4 years, many of these were the same people who didn't have a high school graduation.
Exactly.
And now they're missing a college graduation.
Exactly.
Okay? And prepared for what jobs? I mean, there's no indication that they're worried about work.
Yeah.
You know, so what's the story?
Yeah. And I think that that's the sad thing about it is that, you know, a lot of the protesters and the people that are agitators, they're not taking in consideration that they're coming in, and what makes protests negative is when it becomes violent, when it becomes vandalism. Vandalism has nothing to do with letting your voice be heard or the First Amendment right.
And to have people, again, we have signs of the police brutally handling people, denying folks the medical attention, water, all of these kind of things. You know, let's face it, we're in a nation with a police force, it seems to be unilateral, that has a mentality that when I'm called, I have a license to abuse, harm, hurt, and do anything to anyone, and forget about the idea of due process and trial and the whole bit. It just seems to be it's an unwritten rule. And all of the murders that we've had in custody, deaths and everything, there's nothing that shows remorse on the part of law enforcement at all. Mm-hmm. It's just about the business of, you know, we're going to do what we want to do, and if you get caught up in the system, we'll do you too.
Well, let's while you're saying that, let's just talk about the consistency of in-custody deaths. Why are we still seeing this, and there still seems to be no one that is able to step up and literally have a real discussion with the new sheriff? And I'm concerned about that because we have a new sheriff, and she's gotten very, very quiet and almost impossible to find. And now we have a new police chief who the first person he decided to meet with was one of our pseudo leaders. You know what I'm saying? I said pseudo.
Pseudo?
Yeah.
Oh, because you need to let people know one of them self-appointed leaders.
Yeah.
Nobody asked them to lead anything.
Yeah, and then you have that coming in, and we're looking at a fire chief. We have all this stuff going on, and then we have a former police officer running for mayor. So the question comes in is, when are we ever going to really have real dialogue and have real solutions?
Well, you might have one police officer running for mayor, but I've always contended that a former police chief who is president of the Regional Chamber of Commerce and who served a term as mayor has still got his hands on the strings manipulating what happens in terms of city government.
Mm-hmm.
And people aren't paying attention to what's going on. And that is a great price that we're going to pay for that level of apathy, if you will, and indifference. You're talking about the need for a new fire chief. I ran an editorial about the fire department, the failure that it ever tried to recruit blacks other than word of mouth and the whole scenario. I get a letter from someone who is either in the fire department or who is friends or whatever, complaining that I didn't offer solutions and that I didn't look at what the Union Tribune did on the fire department in 2021. My first response is, if you read, which I did also, the article from 2021 about the numbers in the fire department, where is your letter to the editor of your voice at that time in the past 3 years about what took place? Mm-hmm. Instead of sitting back telling me that I should be talking to the Urban League or the NAACP, which tells me that you're really out of touch in the first place, because neither one of those entities are taking strong advocate positions on issues that mm-hmm. affect the masses. Mm-hmm. They're very, very quiet mm-hmm. in the midst of this crisis that we're in. And so everybody's looking for somebody to save them, but nobody wants to step up and do anything to save themselves. And that's the problem.
Well, and I think about in this time, in this season, we're literally going to have to make sure that we are holding all the organizations accountable, but also trying to find out how can we work together. I think that we have a lot of things in positions, but we're working in silos, and we can't afford to work in silos. We have to come together and have real dialogue, but also realize, and I always say this as a consultant, you know, a lot of times, and I find this mainly with leaders, and I tell people, let's just walk in the room and let's just determine when we get into the room who's the alpha male for the day or the alpha female for the day. Let's establish that. Let's give them the crown and say, okay, today you are the alpha female or alpha male. Let's get past that so that then we can get down to business. I believe we spend a majority of our time determining who's the boss, who's got the most power, who's got the most say, versus just saying, let's get down to work. And I think that we come in with a sense, I would say, a lot of meetings that I'm in, they come in with a sense of arrogancy, and because they come in with a sense of arrogancy, we get nothing done.
Well, I think, Dr. Thompson, I disagree with you on a part of that. They don't spend any time being concerned about who's the alpha male. The egos are such that as far as they're concerned, they're already the alphas when they come in the room. Mm-hmm. So you got a whole bunch of people trying to be alphas, and you don't get much done.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. I like to go into the room because, you know, everybody have these big egos, right?
Right.
Egos. And I'll tell people, anybody who don't think they have an ego, then you're not in the room. But anybody who's in the room normally is going to have an ego because you're going to need that just to survive in this, what I call this world. But the thing comes in is that, can we check the egos at the door? And if we have to determine who's going to have the biggest ego in the room so that, okay, you the biggest ego in the room, we're going to all work together, but we're going to honor you as the biggest ego, because I personally say, and it's my favorite statement, your arrogance has offended my arrogance. You know what I'm saying? And that's so much times that happens in rooms. Everybody's offended that nobody even do nothing.
Well, and it doesn't last very long, because after they get offended, then the next thing they do is leave.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that way it still doesn't get done.
Exactly.
And that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
I don't know, Dr. T. And our positions that we have is we keep putting the issues out there that we see them. Because we announce or expose the issue, it does not follow that I got to come up with a solution for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my job. My job is as an advocacy to make sure that you are aware. Our slogan is a people without a voice cannot be heard. We would print your letter to the editor. We would print your position. If you took time to take a position, we would put that position up. We offer to put your position up on this program, open mic. But, you rather be in your silo and listen than to call and contribute.
Well,
and so what can we do?
Well, the thing that we are going to do is we have made this forum open so that anybody and everybody can come in and have a dialogue, not an argument, but a dialogue. But in the coming weeks, you're going to actually have people live in the studio with us that are going to be able to. We're going to have real dialogue about it because at the end of the day, Dr. Warren, there's going to be an election in November. From this time forward, we're right now in May. Until the election, one thing that we're going to have to do is get people engaged and registered to vote. You know what I'm saying? Engage them and register to vote, and then we need them to vote. Again, I don't, at the end of the day, if you look at what's going on in America and around the country, if we as African Americans and Latinos, those are the two populations I'm talking to right now, as African Americans and Latino, if Donald Trump gets elected as president, I want you all to stand up and raise your hand and say, I helped him get there. If you did not vote or you voted for him, and this is a big concern that I have because there are so many African Americans and Latinos that are supporting Trump, saying that it was better when he was president, not realizing that he was literally making his whole reputation off of the work of Obama. And Joe Biden is now dealing with the work of Trump. So the structure and the stuff that you are seeing that is really tough right now is a Trump era, not a Biden era. Now, Biden also, he has to step up, and I'm going to be real. Biden has to step up and be more presidential, number one. And Kamala is going to have to step up and be more vice presidential. Because right now, I don't care about who you married to. I don't care about, if you're attractive or not attractive. My whole energy is, are you going to represent us and are you going to truly give us a voice? Because all this kiki ha-ha don't work for me, Kamala. You're going to have to step up and show us that you have the interests of the people. And I'm not seeing that right now. I don't care, Dr. Warren. I don't care if she had a party with all the HBCUs at her leaders at her house. That don't affect me. That's just fluff. I want to see policies and positions.
It's nothing new. Kamala's, everybody wasn't jazzed when she was Attorney General, when she ran for Attorney General. Mm-hmm. And, she didn't decide that she was proud of Howard until she got the tag to be vice president. And I won't even discuss the atmosphere and the attitudes of people like that then. The real issue with Biden's campaign is, and this is an unspoken part, more people who talk about his age are afraid that he will die in office and she will become president. That's the fear. Mm-hmm. And not because of what she would know to do as president, because I think her husband follows her around like he's a guardian that has to be there for everything she does. We've never had a woman vice president. So the second gentleman thing is kind of old at this point, But people judge others by their own standards. And white America knows that if they had a woman in there, what they would do. And she's going to be resisted based on that, even though she's not a threat to anyone in terms of the way she functions. So that's just what it is. We're going to sit back, we're going to talk, we're going to argue, we're going to look at court cases, and we're going to watch Trump's numbers go up, and we're going to watch the Democrats play the same old tired game because they're responsible for the loss of people from the Democratic Party because they won't do anything different. They keep recycling the same old tired people and ideas. They won't let fresh blood in. They keep everybody out that doesn't think like them. And the whole world is not concerned about abortions. Yeah, a number of people are going to vote to make sure that we overcome the overturning of Roe v. Wade, But we saw from Stacey Abrams' campaign in Georgia, she hung her whole campaign on the abortion issue, and she lost because people still wanted to talk about food and gas and the economy and all of those bread and butter issues because everybody ain't having children. And so the question gets to be then, what is going to be done and where will we stand? I don't see anyone walking around with a stack of voter registration cards offering to register people. We keep a stack on the desk at the Voice and Viewpoint. I don't have anybody coming in asking for it. We got people who are ex-felons and Secretary of State Weber, when she was Assembly Member Weber, took care of the issue of people being able to vote once they had paid their debt to society. I don't see the interest here. Not like we saw in Georgia, which elected both a Jew and an African American to the Senate when the old guard had controlled those seats for decades.
Well, I think the bottom line is simply this, and maybe I'm an eternal optimist. I believe that the battle is not over until it's over, and I believe that over these next months we're going to have to be that voice that keeps on pushing out there about getting registered to vote, to get people involved, and then help them to see between the murk. Because there's a lot of murk, there's a lot of commentary, there's a lot of energy that is out there. Are we against the war? Yes. Are we against this genocide? Yes. Are we against what Israel is doing? Because we don't even talk about Ukraine anymore. It's all about what's going on at the Gaza Strip and everything else. Are we against all of that? Yes. But I am going to say, I have to keep on saying this because people might get offended. But in my neighborhood, they always say, don't start nothing, it won't be nothing. You know what I'm saying? So in my neighborhood, don't get mad after you start a fight that the whole family come out and whoop you down. You know what I'm saying? And don't stop. They're going to get your mama and your cousin and everybody else because you started it. The Hamas did this purposely. They knew they could not. They knew they could not beat Israel. And they feel like if they could throw that stone and do what they did, everybody would ultimately come to their rescue because they knew that Israel would not stop. Again, part of their plan is working and part of their plan is backfiring. We got to still be cognizant and wise enough to see that this is a strategic plan to unravel the mindset that, this is so bad. I believe that the genocide in the unhumanitarian way they're going about it, I agree with that. But again, you have to start off with Hamas.
But I've said from the beginning of this, Dr. Thompson, from the very beginning, that was the Hamas plan. The Hamas saw the United States about to bring a deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia. It couldn't let that happen. The attack on October 7th was so brutal because they knew that the more brutal they made it, the more angry Israel would be. And they knew that Gaza was being offered up as a sacrifice to disrupt the planned unity between the U.S. and the Arab nations, bringing Israel and Saudi Arabia together. Now, we know if we look at Scripture, there's going to be a period of time that there's going to be some peace for about 3.5 years. And we know an agreement is going to be reached, but there's not going to be a second state. America keeps talking about a two-state solution. According to Scripture, there will never be a two-state solution.
Exactly.
And there's enough time left for there to be one. The only thing on the agenda right now is the rapture and what is the Antichrist doing while he's waiting to take his position.
Yeah.
Because he's alive and well and somewhere in government, and we're close to that. And those who don't believe what we're saying, they can look it up after they're left behind.
Yeah.
Because it's coming.
And I think that we have to just be so mindful in this time in this season that, this is biblical. What we're seeing is biblical. And, there are people out there right now that have a form of godliness but denying all the power thereof. There are people out there that are leading people astray. I think that, even with the Illuminati and everything being so prevalent and just out front, and you see it because some people are just like saying, I would rather be with the Illuminati and be financially successful and sell my soul. But if you're noticing that a lot of these people are going down, but here's the thing that's funny to me is that it is more people of color that are now being called out than ever before that was supposed to be in part of the sacred group.
Well, but that we can't operate on the assumption that people who look like us share our moral values and standards, because that's not the case. The corruption and the decadence crosses all ethnic lines, because it is an element when a people decide to live without God, then this is what we have. It's so amazing that last week we had a National Day of Prayer last Thursday, and it kind of went unnoticed by many folks. And how do we have a National Day of Prayer in a nation that has outlawed prayer in schools, has outlawed Christian symbols and the traditions and all of these things, and it's the hypocrisy that we see in Isaiah 58 when it talks about hypocrisy, and when God says, this is not something I call for, this is your own doing. And so we also see the Barna Institute and other elements are showing us that, as I said last week, church attendance is down across the board, and people are not going back to church following the pandemic. Some are going on Zoom, but for the most part, the attitude is now, I don't need church in terms of the younger generation. They're not interested in it. And so this is what happens when people have kind of had a soft, easy life. They haven't had anything that they had to pray for and look for. And you would think just seeing what's happening in the world, just seeing Gaza, just seeing the Sudan, just seeing all the people who are starving and hurting and everything, that it would be a wake-up call for us to become more concerned from a humanitarian standpoint than to just say, oh, well, it ain't me, and go on about what we're doing.
Well, Doc, let's just have a real conversation. Let's hypothetically, you are the president of the United States. How would you intervene in Gaza, and what would be your recommendation? And I'm not going to make you the president. I'm going to make you the chief of strategic planning.
No, you could make me the president, because
Okay.
I'd be, like Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. I would cut off all shipment of arms to Israel
Okay.
until Netanyahu made a commitment that he was not going to do anything in Rafah. And that's significant, because if he didn't get arms, he would be in the same position that Ukraine found itself with Russia, because Iran is over there, and many people are blaming us for Iran being in a position to even fund Hamas or Hezbollah, because the observation was being made that during Obama's administration, you released all of that money supposedly for humanitarian purposes, those billions of dollars that we had impounded, and that's the money that they're using to do all of this destruction and financing people. So, yeah, and then I would have to look at how much are we spending on these countries and these people's issues in relationship to what we're not spending here. We done rob people of daycare. We're not dealing with food stamps anymore. We have a homeless issue. We have a whole bunch of problems here. We have dismantled our emergency setup that was put in place for the pandemic, and we have another one coming. We're going to have to start all over again from scratch. Many companies here started making the PPE materials and stopped what they were doing to get it. Once the pandemic got underhand, those dollars were cut off. Now, those people are not going to come back and do that again. So where are we going to be? Back to buying stuff from China.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a whole bunch of issues that's taking place, and we won't even leave out climate change. I mean, the tornadoes last week, the flooding in Texas, and every week there's some catastrophe like the floods that we had here that make it necessary to put assistance on the table to help people recover and live.
Yeah. And so, one of the things about it is that we cannot sit back. We can't sit back and just let it be what it be. We're going to have to be actively involved. And if we're not actively involved, we can't complain when it's happening to us.
There's no way we can complain. So I don't know. We have this local market here. We have people tuning in a number of different places. Um, but we really need to hear from you, fellow citizens and neighbors, on these issues. If you're living here, maybe you work in 2 or 3 jobs, but something is going on in your life. Maybe you are experiencing police encounters that you don't think are fair and equitable, like we discuss on Black Men United so often. Maybe you're like the lady who contacted us yesterday, that she was confronted by a man in Escondido in a parking lot who called her the N word and knocked her down. And when the white police officers came, they charged the lady with being the one who instituted the encounter. Or maybe, we got people like the lady out there at Las Colinas that Latasha Williamson brought to our attention, who is 6 months pregnant and wasn't getting natal care and treatment. And then a letter comes back from the sheriff talking about how we have a unit and we do all these things. Kelly Martinez might be new as sheriff, but she's not new to the sheriff's department.
Exactly.
And to me, Kelly Martinez is the embodiment of all of the old ways going back before Colliner to Duffy to all of these sheriffs we had in the past. We had an in-depth in jail this week.
Yes.
Of a person who was an accused child molester. Well, we know accused child molesters in the prison term, they're called short eyes. We know that if you put them in any kind of general population, they're going to be killed.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's just an unwritten rule in jail. If you got a child molester in jail, you kill him. Because in there, people have children, and they're concerned, and it just happens. And so we acting like it's something out of the ordinary. We still hold a track record for the most in-depth custodies of any county in California.
So that's one of the things that I think that we have to be very mindful of, and this is the whole consideration of being engaged. Kelly Martinez got elected; she's in, but now we can't find Kelly Martinez. I have not seen her doing any interviews or anything.
Well, she doesn't have to be found, Brother Thompson, because Kelly Martinez and the district attorney, based on some law changes to synchronize elections, they just got a 2-year extension so that they're in office for 6 years instead of 4. And no one is going to be sheriff in San Diego County that the system does not put up to be sheriff. It's just like all the people who run in this state is the law enforcement lobby out of Sacramento that really determines who's going to get elected.
Yeah. Well, I think at some point or another there are some there in every city there are certain strings that are being pulled. Kelly Martinez is not going to be left in a silo. Somebody's pulling the strings. Somebody is controlling her ear. Somebody is doing what I call the unspeakable, and that makes her untouchable. So who is that?
Well, we won't even try to solve that one tonight. Sometimes there can be dangers to dropping names and not being able to back it up. And we have some ideas of who some of the people are. Remember, there's enough money in San Diego County for the people who really want to get things done to have others do their bidding, and they don't have to show their hand or be present. We got billionaires here. We got over 300 millionaires in La Jolla alone. We got people with great wealth. All of these buildings that are going up downtown, they're not for us. We can't afford them. We can't afford these new condos and apartments that are going up. Okay, so somebody's got money, and the money that's coming here is telling people where to live and what to get involved with. They're not concerned about the cracks and crevices where the masses are, unless they need someone for lawn or gardening or domestic service. Just like Coronado, one of the problems over there is they got jobs, but they don't have any place on Coronado for the housekeepers, domestic folks to live. So they got to commute from National City and Imperial Beach and distant places just to get to work. And it's not like they can catch a trolley over there. So these are the realities of what's going on here in San Diego.
Yeah. And then I think that we have to then hold accountable everybody who's in political office, but also in places of positions as we go forth. Because, see, Dr. Warren, I believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that we have more African Americans in power than we've ever had before. And maybe I'm wrong. But my
You
whole
are.
thing is that if we have so many African Americans in high positions, why are we not seeing an outcome?
Well, we don't have more than we've had before, Dr. Thompson.
Okay.
I have to correct you on that, number one. And being in a position of
Now, wait a
power.
minute. I don't want you to correct me. I want you to educate me.
Okay, well,
Educate me because I want to know when.
okay, well, let me back you up then, okay?
Come on, Doctor.
We had Cliff Graves, who was the first black chief administrative officer for the county of San Diego.
Okay.
At the same time that Leon Williams was on the board of supervisors, all right. At the same time, not long after that, we had our fella as the president of the airport authority, while we had the sister who was over the convention center, while we had Bertha Pendleton as superintendent of schools. So we had all of these people in key positions that were African American, all right? And we had George and then his successors on the city council, all right, on the school board. We've had such historic people as George Walker Smith, which was our first black board member, followed by Dorothy Smith, an educator who retired from the Community College District. We had Constance Carroll, president of the Community College District in those days, who rose to become chancellor of the Community College District for the statewide. So we've had some key women in positions, all right? And so even now we have presidents like the president of Grossmont Community College is a sister who's a lawyer. We have Ricky Shabazz as president for San Diego Community College. Tina King over ECC Education Cultural Center.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we
Dr.
have
Hans.
some people.
Yeah, we have Dr. Hans as president of Mesa College.
Yes, but
You
we
know.
still let it not be said. See, these people are in positions now. Many of them do not have the power that the earlier folks that I mentioned had who held positions, because by them being the first ones, they had a kind of a respect and a recognition from the system as well as from the community. That's not the case today. Most people could care less who holds a position because they don't see any benefit to them in terms of who's sitting in these positions. None whatsoever. So they talk about naming something after Bertha Pendleton. You know,
They named Henry Clay after her.
yeah, well, they drove her out of town. She moved to Vegas to get away from it, you know, and so, you know, they've done everything except rename the city after Leon Williams, having been the first supervisor and the first member of the city council and all of that. But he came to those positions at a time that the black community and the Latino community came to agreements in terms of empowering themselves and working together. That's how Chacon went to become the assembly member and Leon went to be the board of supervisors.
Yeah.
And we didn't run against Chacon for years until people came along like Art and myself. I ran for the assembly twice and for the Senate once, but we didn't get up in support. And they kept gerrymandering and redrawing the districts. And so finally we get Dr. Weber. But she wasn't the first one. She stood on the shoulders of those of us who had already run before.
And I'm not saying that this is what I mean by that. If I look around, all the key positions that you mentioned, 90% of them are still held by African American people. But it would seem like,
No.
90%, because I'm like saying we got somebody on supervisor, we got somebody on city council, we got somebody in the school board, we got all these presidents, and what my concern is what with the things that we are seeing, it would seem like we'll be further ahead.
Not necessarily, because, you know, like Benjamin O. Davis Sr. told the black troops when he became a general, and he went out into a segregated army and spoke to the black troops, and this is what he said to them. He said, "I am of your color, but not your kind."
Exactly.
And so we got a lot of people that look like us.
Yeah.
But as they say today, all kin ain't skin.
Exactly.
You know, all
And I
skin
think
ain't
that-
kin, rather. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is where we're at in our communities now, is that we, just because you're African American does not mean that you're going to always be the best player on the field. And we in this season have to put the best players on the field. And if you get on the field and we send you our support, then we need to make sure that you're going to support us to move the ball to the end zone.
Well, I want to take it a step further than that, because with the Stop the Hate campaign that we're doing with the California Library System, Stop the Hate, we're reaching into these ethnic communities, the African communities, the Black community, the Asian communities, the Chinese, the Filipino. We're reaching into these, the Muslims and the Jewish. And I'm finding a great deal of difficulty in getting people from those communities who want to come forward and participate in a discussion and dialogue about being victims of hate, when African Americans or Black people are the greatest victims of hate in the state. The numbers are, we're the ones, and yet we don't want to take time to even talk about it or get involved. And until we get called the N-word, and then we want to run and tell it on the mountain and shout from the highest hill, but we haven't been there for anybody else, so why should people be there for us?
Yeah. And I think that that's what we have to do. We have to consistently be more conscious. We're going to have to consistently get our face in reading and doing our own research, and not just being spoon-fed through social media and through news bites. And we're really going to have to be engaged. I just heard recently Keon Henderson in Texas, a mega pastor in Texas, and everybody was playing the soundbite when he silenced a woman in his church and told her to be quiet and basically rebuked her. And that soundbite went all over the world, and everybody said that's a shame and everything else of that nature. But he addressed it publicly. He went on the Tamron Hall show. He basically said that the thing is that you saw a soundbite, but you don't realize that this has been a 4-year journey with this same woman, and that there's a difference between somebody being in the spirit and somebody that's there just to disrupt.
But, you know, that misrepresentation takes place.
Yeah.
We saw that with Obama
Yeah.
and his pastor. When the pastor made the comment while he was preaching following 9/11, and he said, "God damn America," and everybody blew that out of proportion,
Yeah.
went into his background and history. But if you looked at it from a biblical standpoint, if you have a nation that wants to take God and God we trust off the currency, wants to abolish prayer, wants to promote homosexuality on an equal basis under the Constitution as anything else, and then wants to, when a tragedy hits, all of a sudden bring out a black choir to sing some gospel and have a pretense of prayer before God that you already abandoned. And so when you look at it in context, it was not a treasonous comment. And there are many of us, you're a pastor, I'm a pastor, I've had to sit people down who would get out of order. We know where the disorder comes from.
Yeah.
It doesn't come, the word tells us that he is not a God of disorder. Okay? So we know that there are people who will come into your service with the sole purpose of disrupting it.
Exactly.
Okay? And so you deal with it. I had a lady come to church once. She came in with earphones on, and she sat there through the whole thing. And then when we got near the end of the service, she takes off the earphones and decides to holler and scream and act like she's in control.
Yeah.
Of course we put out.
Yeah.
And so we can't just take stuff out of isolation.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, what I did appreciate is him addressing it. And he talked about the process. He said, this has been a 4-year process. He said, not only did we talk to her, I personally met with her and told her the appropriateness of it. The ushers had met with her, the trustees, and all these different people met with her in over a 4-year period, trying to get her to understand that this is inappropriate. He said, but then when you know that this is really to quench the spirit, then he has to deal with that spirit.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And for a lot of people like, oh. And I think that's what I always say when we come to the table. We have to be willing to hear the whole entire story and not just be caught up in sound bites. I think it's cute to have signs. And I'm like, my question is, I wonder who printed those signs. They're so nice. I think it's cute to have these press conferences and everything else of that nature. But at the end of the day, Dr. Warren, we got to come to the table and find either middle ground or get as much as we can with what we have left.
Well, not only come to the table, Dr. Thompson, but take a seat at the table and listen to the discussion going on at the table.
Yes.
Because you know and I know that one of the unique things about Black Men and Women United these past 20-some years has been the ability to listen to each other, even when we didn't agree. And the people who did not want to listen and don't want to listen, they're not with us very long. They come and they go because they're just looking for a stage to have speeches made on. But you have to have if you have a concern for others, you will listen.
Yeah.
And we all have to listen. We can't just assume that we know everything.
Yeah.
I know people might say that sounds strange coming from me, but I know that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
I always tell the story that Socrates was once told that he was the smartest man in the world and the wisest. And he said, no, I'm not. So he went out to do a survey, and he went to people who were astrologers and mathematicians and physicians and all these different things. And he came back to the marketplace where people gather for discussion, and he said, you know what? I want to agree with you. I am the smartest man in the world. And they said, well, what made you change your mind? He said, because the more I talk to people, it seems like I was the only one that knew that I didn't know everything. All the others knew everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're here at the end of our show. Just want to encourage each and every one of you all not to sit just in your living room or just listen to the sound bites, but we need you to get involved. If you're not registered, please register to vote. We're not going to tell you how to vote, but we're going to say let your vote count. Do not sit back and say it doesn't make a difference, because yes, it will make a difference. We need to hear your voice. This is from the desk of the editor, and this is an open forum. So next week, I want you while we're doing certain things, I want you to go ahead and be able to send things in to us. And say you got questions and that you have some concerns and you want to hear more about this and that, and let us
And you can send your questions in early. You can email them to us. We will raise them on this program if you send them. You don't have to wait until we actually are meeting. We can line it up and set aside time for discussion, and you can come on the phone if you want to and participate. So we want participation.
Well, with that being said, this is from the desk of the editor right here on GODradio1.com. Y'all be blessed.